Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today's guest on the show is Manas Rajkumar, or how he wants to be known, Manas RK. Manas is a drummer and musician who plays for the band Inverted Zebra. His band plays some great stuff and do check them out. They usually do shows in Gurgaon and Delhi. In this conversation with Manas, I speak to him about music, different genres of music, and why music is important in society. Have you really ever thought about how we can actually judge different forms of music and different genres? We actually go into some really great detail about if it even is possible or objectively possible to actually rate one music genre to another. I look at how Manas determines how he enjoys songs, and it's really compelling, I have to say. Just a little bit of housekeeping before you listen to the conversation with Manas. During filming the podcast, I forgot to record myself for the first 40 minutes or so. Hence, if you are watching this on YouTube, you may only see Manas answering my questions for the first 40 minutes, after which I did remember to record myself and it becomes like the usual conversation I have. Do know that this will not cause any problems from the audio side of things. So you can still hear me asking the questions, etc. Hence, there shouldn't be a problem for people only listening in through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the other media channels. Anyway, enough of me rambling. Here's the conversation with Manas. Hey Manas, welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey man, it's a pleasure to be on.
So, how have you been keeping yourself busy during the quarantine period?
Well, I've been doing a lot of music lately. I'll just so basically, as you know, I graduated school last year, and so in this, I took a gap year because I wanted to pursue music and I wanted to work on music, and I spent this year doing a lot of different things in music, from composing music to learning different things like music production and getting better at drums, and now I'm basically I've been collaborating with a lot of people for original music and for covers, and I've been posting them on Instagram and YouTube. Just because I mean this time gets pretty boring, and so I try to just do whatever I can to keep myself entertained, and this is quite fun.
So that's great. So you talk about these collaborations. So are there with, let's say, people who are into vocals, or are there with people who are, let's say, into piano, which is different instruments? Because just for the viewers, so Manas is a drummer by profession, or rather that's his specialty. So is it people from different, I'm guessing that'd be the way to go about things. Let's say people who are specialists vocals or specialists in piano. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm the drummer for these collaborations, obviously, and I would collaborate with all sorts of musicians. So I got into Berklee College of Music for this fall, and so I've been getting in touch with a lot of people who are going to Berklee, and I've been collaborating with them. So my latest collaboration was with a vocalist, a bassist, a guitarist, and another guitarist, and so it basically is we're all around the world and all of us are stuck at home, so it's a nice little thing that we all enjoy doing. And I realized a lot of musicians have started collaborating because that no one's really able to go out and perform, and so this is one way to just keep doing music at home.
How different do you feel that is to, let's say, performing in person? Because I've been to some of your concerts and rather some of your performances that you have put forward with your band. How different do you feel it is to, let's say, put a music video out with these collaborations and have, let's say, the clips of maybe you and the other people in snippets and showing that? How different is that to, let's say, performing live in front of an audience?
So it's quite different because when we're collaborating virtually, we're not actually listening to what each of us are playing. We're all just listening to the song, the original song, if this is a cover, and we would just play our own instruments for that, and then one of us would put all the the drums, the guitar, the bass, put it all together, and then finally it's only after everything is put together can we hear what it sounds like. So rather than performing live where you're playing with everyone else, so obviously performing live is a lot more fun, and there's a lot more improvisation you can do, because in these virtual covers, you're basically following the song, and the song is not going to change if you start, changing it up a bit and everything. So you have to stick to the song, versus in a performance where you can basically just change it up. You can improvise with the band, because you know the band, you know what you can do. Like, the ending, you can start doing some fills, and the guitarist can start like strumming and everything, like. But you can't do that, and that's why I really miss performing, because it is really fun, and we would have performed if it wasn't for coronavirus right now.
No, that's totally understandable. But so when you talk about this essence of, let's say, improvising on the go, so because I hear a lot of comedians, even musicians, talk about this, that it's totally different when they are, let's say, in the middle, when they are on stage and when they are performing for large crowds, is because you can actually sense what these crowds are feeling, if they are low, if they are really enjoying the music you're putting out or the art you're putting out. So I think that is lost, and just to a layman, because I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to music in that sense, but how much do you improvise, let's say, on a general show?
Right.
Is it very often, or are you happy that you're able to meet your predetermined notes or whatever?
Well, so I'll talk about like the last set of concerts I had with my band, which was about last year this time.
Yeah.
And in those concerts, basically we had a set list of cover songs, because at that time none of us had really composed anything, so we weren't doing originals, and we had a set of cover songs, and we would basically, it's more about, so what we did was, instead of improvising a lot live, what we would do is we would change up a lot of different parts of the songs when we're practicing, so it's not exactly the same as the original. Like, like the guitarist would maybe add a little riff somewhere, maybe they change up the solo, we might double the length of something or shorten it and just change it up. And I'm mostly improvising my drum fills everywhere, because I don't really, unless it's like an iconic drum fill in a song, I change it up, I do whatever I feel like at that moment. But we're not really improvising within the song as much as we would do in, like, for example, for every concert I basically, at the end of a song, I play a drum solo, and that drum solo is more or less improvised. I just think of, what, like, basically first part of the solo I'm going to start here, the second part I'm going to slow down and go here, and then in the end I'm going to speed up and finish like this. But everything else I basically just improvise. And similarly, the guitarists and bassists, they, for one solo here or there, they might improvise. And basically it's also with the crowd. Sometimes the crowds want another song once our whole set list is over. So then, we think of some of the songs that we might know, and we all play, and we start improvising with that also. So it depends on the mood of the crowd, how excited they are and everything. Because if the crowd's really down, they won't really want to hear a bunch of musicians improvising on something, right? So it depends on the crowd. But yeah, we do improvise a decent amount.
Wait, so you said that if the crowd is feeling maybe low, in the sense that isn't enjoying the music as much, why do you think they wouldn't want, let's say, hear improvised music? Don't you think that would be, let's say, more raw, or maybe more?
Yeah, well,
that's really there at the moment, and something that you're actually creating on the go.
Well, it's not that we don't play improvised music even then. Like, I would still do my drum solo and all that, but it depends. For example, if sometimes the crowds are not even that big, they're like much smaller, and sometimes they're not really paying attention to us, because we play in restaurants and like pubs and all, and sometimes the crowds just aren't really into the music we're playing. Sometimes they are, because we play rock music, and sometimes they're not really into that. And when they're not really into that, for us to go super heavy and improvise is not something they would want when they're trying to have a conversation and all. But so we do that, because yeah, I don't care, I'm gonna do that. But we probably won't do that as much as if the crowd was like all around us, screaming and enjoying to the music. Then we would probably go heavier and improvise more.
How much of a sense does it come down to, let's say, that this is the sort of music that you guys make, your band makes, and that's how you want it to be put out? And how much does it come down to, we understand that this may be this may be our music and what we want to put out, however, we understand that this may not suit the majority of people who come in to listen. So is there a balance to find between, let's say, your art and what the consumer wants? Or are you more, let's say, towards honing your art and doesn't matter if the consumer enjoys because you are enjoying and eventually that might trickle down to the consumers? Or is it that it's totally about the crowd? So if you're going to this pub and they like this sort of music, we have to play this music.
So with my band, okay, it's more of a balance, but it's also all rock music. So within rock music, we would play some songs that are really popular, like classic songs like Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses or Dream On by Aerosmith. These are really, really popular songs that people know and appreciate. And so we play these songs and we normally start and end our set with some of these popular songs. And then we try to put our, like, we try to have a range of music. So we'd have some really popular rock songs. We'd have some classic rock and roll songs which, you know, hype up the crowd. We have some darker, more like technical rock music also, because that's just like, that's probably one of the most fun to play also. And we try to like spread out in a way so that, you know, even if you're someone who doesn't really listen to rock, you can still get a good mix of different things and you'll still hear some songs that you do know, the really big ones. So we try to keep it balanced. It's a little more for like the kind of music we like, but we keep a few songs there that everyone knows, and they're really fun to play, so I don't mind that either.
Right. So something that's been talked about, let's say you're in this whole quarantine period where people are having to, let's say, do most of the things virtually. Let's say artists, I mentioned comedians before, but even musicians are putting a lot of stuff online through Zoom calls or whatever video conferencing medium there is. Is there a difference in, let's say, getting into the zone, as many people call it, that it's for a musician, for a comedian, for an artist, that for them to perform at their best, they have to be, let's say, whatever suits that particular individual, they have to be amongst the people, or just be silent and amongst themselves? Or has it been difficult to, let's say, gather yourself if you are making music virtually?
Yeah, so it is harder. It is much harder to do it virtually even if you're performing, even if you just decided I'm going to go live on Instagram or YouTube and I'm going to perform for like an hour. It's still not as engaging because you can't see the crowd can see you. So you're just playing to a camera and it's not the same. And even when we're doing our collaborations, again, I'm just listening to a song and playing to a camera. So that basically when there's an audience, you know, when they start clapping and cheering after the song is over or during it, you know, that really that gives you a lot of energy, that hypes everyone up and incentivizes everyone to, like, you know, play in a certain way. And we can't really do that if it's online. So it is harder, and no one really, like, I mean, everyone's just waiting to go back to perform. And in a lot of countries, like, it has become better. People have started performing again. Even here in India, in some restaurants have opened where they've started having concerts, but it's still really less. And eventually when it gets better, people will stop this online thing. Like, they'll stop collaborating virtually, or they'll at least like reduce it, because that's not actually what they want to do.
Right. So there's this word that's been thrown about when musicians, artists talk about this sort of intangible thing that they can actually sense from the crowd, whatever that may be, a sixth sense, or a sense that, as you mentioned, if they aren't enjoying a particular track, you may change it up, play something that's more popular, something that's more enjoyed. So how much, like, I don't know if I'm probably repeating the question again, but what is, let's say, do you have a definition for that term, intangibles, or just identifying that sixth sense in the crowd or who you're performing to?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, the crowd, like, reacts to how you're playing. And so I've never performed in like a large venue for just a concert, but I've performed in restaurants and I've performed at school and everything. And when you finish a song, you can easily just see, even if the crowd's clapping and all, you can see how they're actually reacting to the music. So like, if you've got a set of 5 songs and you would save the most popular ones for the end, but then you wanna, the crowd's not really reacting to your first or second song. You just want to bring, some of the one of those popular songs back, just to get them hyped up a bit. It's basically, you basically look at the crowd and you see how is it going, because a lot of bands, they don't really focus on how the crowd is reacting. They like it when the crowd claps a lot, but when they don't, they like, okay. But what you should do is you should like see how you can basically make the crowd enjoy more without changing up your style of playing. Like, I'm not saying go and play pop, which the crowd would enjoy more, or Hindi, but play party from your set list itself, but just play songs, make it in a way so that the crowd enjoys even if they don't know the music.
So you talked about some bands don't really, let's say, focus on the crowd. They understand that, okay, if they are getting applauded, then that's something that they hear. But is it similar for, let's say, all musicians? So something that may come to my mind is that if someone is a pianist and he or she is concentrated on his piano to perform a piece, and he isn't, let's say, because let's say the crowd is appreciating his or her sort of music, then there may not be, let's say, a sort of visual aspect to a pianist when he's constantly keeping in contact with the crowd. So do you think there is something to be gained from that when you're totally invested only in your instrument, your music, and not concentrating anything about the crowd? So you're sort of zoned out and zoned in your instrument, in your music.
So there are, I can put performers into like 2 categories. There will be one who they play more technical music, and so they'd be a lot more into like their instrument and be really focusing on what they're doing. And the other one is where it's less technical and they tend to play around a lot. They tend to go around, like, for example, I'll give you an example of 2 rock bands that one for each category. So for the category of them really focusing on their music and not really interacting with the crowd, there's this band called Porcupine Tree, and they're quite big, and they play progressive rock and metal music, and basically they're really popular and they're known for their technical music, and so they don't bother trying to interact with the crowd. They don't bother try to like get them energized or anything like that. They would just play their music and look into it, and that works for them. They don't have as big of an audience as some of the less technical bands, but the audience that they have does appreciate what they do. Now for the other category, an example would be Motley Crue. They're a band that they're like a classic rock band, and they focused a lot on how they looked on stage, how they dressed up. They interacted a lot with the crowd. There were times in their concerts where they won't even play music for 15-20 minutes. They just talk to the crowd, just do weird stuff. They'd like drink alcohol on stage. They'd jump into the crowd, do some different stuff just to get the crowd like more into it. So both work. I try to be in the second category. So when I perform, I dress up with normally like darkish clothes. I try to wear some sort of leather, maybe a leather jacket or leather pants, and I put eyeliner. I take off my glasses. My hair is really messy, and the same is with the rest of my band. We all have different things we do, and so basically we try to look good on stage, and we try to interact with the crowd so that they get more excited and more into the show. Because and this is something which I feel bands should do when they're at least growing, because we have not I have not found the perfect audience for me yet. That takes time, and the second category just makes it lets you interact with the crowd even if they're not into your music, but they still like if even if they don't really appreciate your music as much, the crowd can still be a part of the concert, and they like that. Versus the first one where they're only listening to your music, where you need to find the right audience for that.
Right. So I think where it boils down to is when we're talking about this technical aspect, and I think some instruments do require that. Let's say the violin or the piano, where it is very much technical and something that you're almost putting out, let's say, for the crowd and or the audience, and then the audience has his or her own interpretation of that piece. Whereas the work you do, or the work, let's say, some of the other vocalists and some of the other singers and drummers do, is that there is, of course, this essence of music, but it's also about bringing the crowd along for the journey. So however long you guys are performing, an hour, half an hour, an hour and a half, it's sort of one togetherness, if I may put it that way, because I feel that's very much similar in football. If you go to watch, let's say, any football game, and it's a close game where the crowd's really up and the team's really performing, you feel as one unit, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because you're almost going for the journey together. So yeah, I guess we can understand both elements on their own right.
Yeah.
But there's just one sort of sub question I have to that. Do you think people, let's say, categorize music in a way that's, let's say, hierarchical, in the sense that, oh, that's technical, so that has to be the best music that's out there, and that's maybe too cliche, that's maybe too I don't know, for the masses, so that may not be good music. Do you categorize music, or do you think it should be categorized?
Well, one thing is that as the years have gone by, genres in music have become less and less important. So initially, when there was classical music and then jazz music came, the richer society didn't really appreciate that kind of music. And similarly, when jazz was there and rock came, and then when rock was there and hip hop came, but now the genres are all just like really like intertwined with each other. Like somebody's mixing hip hop music with rock music and has an element of jazz, and so you can't really say, because what used to happen earlier was, that's pop music, that's not good music. I'm only going to listen to this kind of music. But now you can't really categorize it like that. For some songs you can, but a lot of it you cannot. And so I don't really decide if I like a song or not, if it's mainstream or not, but if I like it. So a lot of the songs I don't like are mainstream, but it's not because they're mainstream that I don't like them. It's just people grow up with different music, and some people like more complicated music than others, and the people who like the complicated music do not appreciate simple mainstream music, and people who like mainstream music are like, that's too complicated, I don't like it. So it's just with what you grow. And so I like rock music, I like complicated dark rock music also, I like psychedelic rock music, I like simple energetic classic rock music, I like it all. But I like rock music just because I really like drums and I really like distorted guitar, and just it all works together in that. So there are a few songs in different genres that I do like, but I tend to stick to this. But it's not because other genres are mainstream.
Right. So you talked about this essence of, let's say, when you are listening to a song, you try to put your own judgment on things. Let's say if you actually like the music, it doesn't matter what people on Twitter say, how people have actually awarded it. But how difficult do you feel that is? Because, let's say, everywhere we're consumed by social media, we're consumed by, let's say, what other people have to say, and that sort of influences the decisions we make as individuals. So how difficult do you think that, even if there is a particular music, there's a particular piece, and it's really highlighted by the mainstream media, but you don't like, how difficult is it to like actually turn away from that and find, let's say, intricacies? Because all you're fed on your Twitter feed, on your Instagram, is that, oh wow, this song is so good, it has to be good because it's sung by this person or this band. So how difficult do you feel that is to, let's say, find an even ground?
Well, so I think that So it's like once you start listening to, for example, a certain band, then you have it's like watching a TV show, right? Once you start watching a TV show and you start liking it,
Yeah.
then as more episodes come out, there's like you know what to expect to a certain level, and similarly with a band or an artist, you know what to expect to a certain level, and so you it's easier for you to like that kind of music also. For example, if if Motley Crue were to release a song, then I would know what kind of music it would be, and so I'm already prepared for that. um, and similarly, if a new pop song is released by an artist that I don't appreciate, I know what kind of song that's going to be, but I'll still listen to it. And if he or she releases something that I appreciate, that's good and that's different, and people have done that. But it's just that people also, like, after a point, you don't want to keep trying to find good music in play with from an artist who's not like making music you like, and so you tend to stick to certain artists or bands.
Right. So what I boil this down to is, from what I'm gathering here, is that, and I totally understand that any normal person would do that, because who has the time to, let's say, listen to X amount of people and the music they are putting out. Not to say that they're putting out bad music, it's just that there are time constraints of everyone's lives and they have things to do. But for example, there is this particular musician you really like, and he puts out a new single, he puts out a new album, and then you sort of have this expectation on him that, as you mentioned, that you sort of know the sort of music he or she will put out. So my question here is that, wouldn't you feel that because you've liked his music or her music for so long and it's been so good, if they do release a single or an album, can you actually take an objective take on things on that album or that single, to say that, or maybe he is an artist I admire really, but this album isn't up to standards or isn't as good as something else he's produced, or it doesn't become more of a tribal thing that, oh, I really like Billy Joel, so it has to be great.
So no, I definitely look at it in an objective way, and I also, for the bands and artists that I really like, I listen to the songs multiple times before deciding if I really like them or not. Like, I can give an example. One of my favorite bands of all time, Muse. And I've liked them for a while, and they recently released an album about 2 years ago, which was not great. I mean, they experiment a lot. Every album there is a little different, and this one was a little more on the, I would say it's on the synth pop side. It didn't really work with their kind of music. I did like 1 or 2 songs in the album, but that's it. Everything else was not that good, and so I realized that in the beginning itself. As I listened to the songs more, I started liking some songs more, but mostly, like, I didn't like it. And so I try to keep an objective view on things like this. But yeah, I mean, it's like, if they release a bad album, I would still rather listen to that than if an artist I don't like releases an album, because at least I know that they could have something, maybe some little things in the songs that are good, that little production aspects, or maybe like a guitar riff or something that actually sounds good.
So we've been talking about, let's say, judging music, if it's even possible to judge music rather. So just let me know how you got into music, basically. What were your early inspirations and how you took it professionally, really?
Okay. So I got into I started playing drums, I think, around the age of 8, and I'm currently 19, so it's been more than a decade of me playing drums. And I don't actually remember why I chose drums. I have no idea why, but it was a good choice. And I also, so my parents do like rock music and music from the 60s and 70s. a lot more than today's music, just like me.
Right.
And a lot of that influence came from them, because as I grew up, they would play songs by, Pink Floyd or the Beatles or Rolling Stones or, the Doors. And I would just get influenced by that. And even my playing would get influenced by these things, because when I play drums, I want to just play to songs. And what songs would I play to? The songs that I like, and I end up liking those songs because of just me listening to them. And so I guess that's how I got into rock music. And it was this band Guns N' Roses that was the first rock band I really liked. And from there, so that was a classic rock time for me, where I heard Guns N' Roses and Slash, AC/DC. And I would slowly move on to more dark and more complex music. So there was a point when all I'd listened to was like Pink Floyd, Porcupine Tree, Muse. There would be like more complex stuff. And now I listen to complex stuff also, but I also listen to a lot of like a lot less complex stuff, like Green Day, like Motley Crue. Just because it helps me, because the music I'm listening to influences the music I compose. And so I've released 2 songs, and both these songs I released at a time when I was very much into dark, complex music. So both these songs are quite dark, decently complex. And now currently I'm composing an EP, which is a small album. So it'll have about 4 to 5 songs. And this has a mix of, half of it is some energetic Green Day or Motley Crue influence stuff, and the other half is more Muse or Pink Floyd influence, where it's more progressive and a little darker. Just because I feel like, and I do like that I've got it in, like I'm not stuck on dark music and complex music right now, because there was a time when that's all I listened to. And this is the way that I want to act on stage, interact with the crowd and all. It doesn't really work with that kind of music. And so I'm happy I'm also into this kind of music, so that in concerts I can play both exciting, fun songs which excite the crowd, and I also can play some darker stuff, so that just to get a huge, like a variety of songs in my concerts. So so now I've been playing drums for a long time. I've been taking like private lessons and everything, and now I'm going to Berkeley for drums and music in general. So I'm planning to pursue music production and drum performance, so that I can take up drum performance and form a band and become, and let the band grow and all that. And I would also take music production, because that would help me in my compositions and everything, and also as something to do on the side to earn some extra money if I need it, because the band, it can take a little time to grow, so I could always be a music producer for other artists on the side if I need to. So let's see what happens with that.
Wait, so there are a lot of things to unpick here. So first of all, you talked about let's say your parents had this interest in rock music, and that sort of, let's say, influenced you. And I'd say that it would do to any household in that sense, because let's say my parents, they listen to a lot more Hindi music, and even the music I listen to date is mostly Hindi. It's not that I don't listen to, let's say, Western music, but most of my appreciation comes to for Hindi music, because that's what I was born. That was what I was let's say brought up with, rather. But so my question here is that if you were exposed to some other sort of music when you were growing up, would it be that it'd be a little difficult for you to maybe, let's say, experiment with rock music, or do you think that you would have still stumbled upon rock music later down the line and still enjoyed that?
That's interesting. I'm not entirely sure about that, because I grew up with rock music, I play rock music, and I listen to rock music. So I can't, but let's just say that I grew up with jazz music.
Right.
Then my drumming style I would have started working on jazz drums first, and I would have, so that would be the kind of music that I would start liking. And if once I like jazz music, rock music is quite different, and so maybe I don't know how, if I would like it or not, and I actually don't know. I mean, I can't really tell.
That's totally
Yeah.
Um,
But
So-
actually, I'm glad I like rock music because
Yeah.
I really I mean, I just feel like, and I think a lot of people can agree with me on this, is that rock and roll concerts are a lot better than
Right.
like pop concerts or and like a lot of other genres of music, just because there's so many instruments and the crowd is really hyped. You know, there are a lot of, it's just it's a very enjoyable experience as compared to other ones which are not as I feel as, because if you look at this, like in a pop concert, a lot of times the vocalists are singing to backing tracks, and even rap concerts they would sing to the original song itself. And that doesn't happen in rock because everyone's got an instrument and everyone plays the music. So the live version of the music is quite different from the original version, which makes the concert a lot more enjoyable. And that's why I'm glad that I'm in rock music. I'm into rock music.
I was gonna go with this. So so you mentioned that, let's say, because you do consume a lot more rock music, your music is sort of, the music you create has been sort of oriented towards that sort of fashion. But recently you've indulged in appreciating different genres of music. So how important do you feel that is? Because I've talked about this to be extremely important in all walks of life. So you can equate this to, let's say, ways of thinking. So if you are, let's say, associated with a political ideology, it's not that you won't entertain the other side of the argument.
Yeah.
Or if you can equate it in sports, if you have a certain model of playing, you wouldn't appreciate what the other coach is putting forward, or whatever the equation may be. So how important do you think that is in the modern day? Or
So this is like, okay, so this is similar to what I said earlier with like trying to branch out and try to appreciate what other people are doing and making or saying, you know, depending on the context. As I said, I got really into like dark, complex rock music, and so it's basically, there's normally like, so in the context of music, it would be like there's like a turning point where, you know, one day you just like stumble upon a song by a band that you don't listen to, and you know of them, but you know you don't like their music, but then you stumble upon a song that you do like a lot, and then you know, start listening to other songs by the band, and you get into them. Before you know it, you're not listening to the same kind of music anymore. And that's exactly what happened with Green Day for me, because I knew a few songs by them, like Boulevard of Broken Dreams and all, and I'm like, they're all right, they're not great. And then I started listening to, then I got into some of their better music, and I realized that they are quite good. And with that came some other bands that were more energetic and less dark, because as I started listening to them, I started realizing that I also do like this kind of music. And so I can like this other kind of music also, which is similar to this. And the same thing can be with, as you were saying, like if you've got a view on something, right, you should like consider what other people are saying, just because, I mean, they might have a point, right? And before you know it, like your point might even be their point. So yeah,
I totally agree with that. And I think that's sort of, let's say, what I've been propagating about that. That's the influence of cancel culture in society, so that people are becoming very much, let's say, in their own, let's say, bubbles, and not even wanting to entertain what the other person is saying. However radical that might be, however stupid that might appear to you on, let's say, the first glance, but just listen to the other person and let him or her put her point across, and then you can make your own judgment on that. I think that's always beneficial. So when I work out, generally I usually have, let's say, a podcast on, and more recently I've started having, let's say, more music on. And there's this very interesting thing that I don't know if you probably had a similar experience, but is that if when you do listen to a very, let's say, energetic track or music that really pumps you up, basically you can basically, let's say, work out much better.
Right.
In the sense that you can run that extra mile,
Yeah.
you can lift that extra kg, or however you may put it.
Mhm.
So what do you think? Why do you think that is, and what is it? What is so special about music that, let's say, turns us on in that sense?
Yeah. So for me, like, and I'd say with everyone, it's that when you listen to music, it basically gets a feeling in you. So if you're listening to, like for me, if I'm listening to like punk rock or classic rock music, or like for other people, if they're listening to some rap music or pop music, which is energetic, right? They would, they want to dance to it. They'd want to jump around, run around, because that's what they would do in a concert or, at parties. And so the same energy comes into you. So it does help you work out in that sense, because you've got the energy, you wanna, because it reminds you, because you've probably done that before. You've probably like danced at parties, or basically it even reminds you of maybe other songs that you've, jumped around to and everything. So it kind of just gives you that energy to like, I guess that helps you get that extra little pump so that you can lift more.
So this brings us down to like a really interesting tangent, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. This is because this idea of, let's say, the placebo effect, and what exactly is that? So, for example, if you are a cancer patient, and I give you the sugar pill, and I say that this is probably the best medicine cure that you can have for your disease, and even if it is just a sugar pill, nothing, and any sort of medical thing associated with it, you would still take it, and there's this amazing statistic that you'd be almost 50% more likely to survive from the particular disease, just because I told you as a respected doctor or someone that this will cure your thing. And that sort of, let's say, just fired some neurons in your brain to say that, oh, this is really good for me, so I must have a good way. I think music sort of does that in a similar way. When you talk about listening to energetic music and you equate that back to, let's say, the times you spend in a concert or dancing with your friends at a bar or something like that, and you sort of instantaneously get this pump to say that, oh, I should probably work out harder, or whatever that thing is.
Yeah, so it's like it reminds you of other times that you've listened to this music, and also the placebo effect is a real thing. It does work a lot of the times. Like with that cancer example, it's because the patient will get hope, and the patient will stop being so stressed or so worried that the body can function better, and it's more of like the pill is not really doing anything, but it's just that because you're calmer and more composed, your body is actually working better. And similarly, as you said, like the songs that you listen to, they basically, so that's not exactly a placebo effect, but that's like it reminds you of other times you listen to the song or similar music, and you get that pump for that.
It's interesting to know that if it's actually the song that's actually doing that, or is it that, I guess you could say that it's the song doing that in the sense that it's reminding you of past experiences. But so this is interesting thing that you can actually pull out then, I guess, is that, so obviously we've seen most of the famous artists, musicians, and whoever are in the art fields, let's say there's this notion that's put forward on them that if they are under some sort of influence, be it psychedelics, be it alcohol, be it any of these sorts of drugs, that their art will be much superior because let's say, I don't know what the reason is, or do you actually think that's true, or do you think that it's just a notion that the media puts out?
So like it's from what I've heard, it's basically alcohol. I mean, alcohol not as much is not as much of an escape, but from what I've heard, like hallucinogens, like drugs which make you hallucinate. They make you see things and think of things that you've never thought or seen before, and that is like an escape from reality. And there have been and so that does affect your songwriting a lot, because you experience things that are so different from reality itself that you have to like write about that, and you have to, and basically for musicians that end up doing this enough, it completely changes them. It completely changes their songwriting, and for the good or the bad, but it does affect it a lot. So I can give an example. The original singer and songwriter of Pink Floyd, Sid Barrett, was he started off the band Pink Floyd, and they released an album with him which was quite big, but the issue was that he started getting into a lot of like these drugs that make you hallucinate, and so that affected his songwriting a lot. And his songs would become simpler and simpler. They would have less in them, and compared to when he started, because there would just be so much going on in his head that's what he'd end up making. And there was this one instance in a concert where for like quite a long time he just faces back to the audience and played one note on the guitar again and again and again, because I guess he was like tripping on some like some drugs, and he has been for a long time. And this eventually he did die because of this. And till then, like he left Pink Floyd early enough because he knew the band was growing big, and he did not want to take it down because of his addiction. And Pink Floyd did become a big band after him, but he unfortunately died because he just and he did release some solo albums after that, but they were nothing compared to earlier, just because it affected him a lot. And I'm sure it has affected musicians in good ways too, but like in terms of like their songs have ended up becoming better, but in this case not as much.
So this sorts of points me towards this question is that, do you think that, let's say, revolutionary music, revolutionary art, or the best of the pieces that are there in the world can only come, let's say, through psychedelic experiences, or through, let's say, being on some sort of substance when you're actually performing that art or you're performing that piece of music? Or do you think it can actually also come from having none of those things and just being a normal person with normal experiences? Or does it have to be that you have to, let's say, go through a certain path, that you have had dark experiences in life, and that's only when you can create the best of music, the best of art? So yeah.
Well, so I wouldn't say that you'd have to take drugs to make amazing music, and not all the best music in the world has been made under the influence of drugs. But one thing's for sure is that a lot of the bigger artists and bands and all these popular songs, they were made because these artists have gone through experiences in their life which has affected them, and so they can write about it and write from with that in their head. And so usually for example, in today's music, in today's hip hop and music, there are a lot of black rappers coming up, but I'd say none of them, or nearly none of them, are from an upbringing, or from a rich upbringing or anything like that, because all of them grew up in the streets, around murder and around crimes and everything, which affected them in a way that they were able to make a certain kind of music. And it's not as much, and it's not even about that you have to be brought up in a harsh way, but it's just you need to have enough to express. Because if somebody just sits at home all day with nothing going on in their life, there's they won't be able to write very good music. And the other thing for like these really popular songs is that, I mean, they're all written by geniuses, and there are some people who just won't be able to write like that. And you know, you can see that. Like, there are bands that I do really like a lot, but I know that they're not good enough to write a song like Bohemian Rhapsody or Comfortably Numb, or songs that, you know, that are so like Hey Jude, yeah, songs that are really popular and really good, influential. So there are bands that I like, and I really enjoy some bands, but like they don't have to write the bestest songs, because for the bestest songs, almost every time the artists grow up with a lot of like almost harsh, yeah, they grow up with harsh experiences, and also they are geniuses in that field.
So when we talk about, let's say, being brought up in let's say harsher circumstances, be it the way in society is really living in poverty, living in, let's say, in places that may not have as affluent, let's say, facilities that what the both of us may share, or what people growing up in modern societies today share. But do you think we, as the people who consume music, would actually look upon the people who are consuming the music and where they've come from, and say that, oh, just because this individual has gone through this suffering, this livelihood, we have to appreciate that music? Do you think there's this sort of, let's say, sympathy that gets associated with music, that only, let's say, the darkest of music can be great because of the lives these people have lived, and just because, let's say, someone in the UK, someone in USA who has brought up a reasonably happy life and hasn't had to go through these amount of suffering, but may have had different sort of experiences. Maybe he or she may have traveled a lot of different countries or experienced different cultures, and that may have, let's say, twined their experiences to that something that's totally different, but we may not look at that music to be as influential, as powerful in society.
Well, it's basically, if an artist has gone through some trauma and some issues and then writes music about that or related to that, it is a lot more influential than an artist who hasn't gone through it and then writes about it. And artists do write about, you know, it's like, if you yeah, of course there is a certain level of sympathy that comes, you know, if you're an artist who's gone through a lot, who's struggled a lot, people do sympathize. But also the music industry is really harsh, and so they don't sympathize too much or for too long if you're not good, and if you have been brought up in a good upbringing, but your music is really good, then that is what they look at. Because at the end of the day, they want to make money. Everybody wants to make money. All the record labels want to make money, and so they look at your music. And so, like, in today's day, if a black rapper was to go to a record label, he would be, you know, there would be a much higher chance of him getting a deal before the music is heard, like, as in, like, them considering him. There'd be a much higher chance of that than, like, if a white rapper went, or if an Indian rapper went to abroad for that. It's just because that's there's more
Sort of formula.
Yeah,
Sort of a formula that's been established, and they understand that if we are investing so much in this person, we are sort of guaranteed these results because we can look back on several examples.
yeah. So that is partly the reason why most of the rappers are black. Apart from the fact that, I mean, they have gone through a lot in their life, and this is a lot. Like, for example, there have been genres of music that have been more around certain races or certain cultures. Like, initially, jazz was a lot more black kind of music, and you know, rock has been a lot more white kind of music. It's just so, depending on the kind of music, people do stereotype and people do all that, but it has worked. So yeah.
what do you think is, let's say, the goal of music? What do you think music is for? Do you think it's about sharing messages that aren't shared in society? Do you think it's just about expression? Or do you think, what do you think? What do you equate, let's say, music to? Why do you create music?
Well, so music has, apart from, okay, so there overall, a genre of music is only created because they're not okay with what's there before. And so initially when there was classical music, with like 100 different musicians, orchestras and all going on, that was all for, it was a very expensive thing to listen to, because this was before the time of recordings. So people would go and, people would go to an auditorium and they'd listen to the music, and only the rich people could afford it. Only the rich society would go for this music. And so this was also the time when there were marching bands, and so all these restaurants, all these smaller venues, they couldn't afford these classical musicians just because of the number of people there, and also just because they're really expensive. And so they would just get these marching band musicians, just to come. They'd get they'd just get the marching band musicians, and in a marching band there would be 5-6 different people playing the drums, each would playing a different thing. One would play the snare drum, one would play the bass drum and all. So they'd just get all that. They'd get one of the best drummers out of all of them, tell them to start playing. They'd get some guy with a saxophone and a guy with a bass, and they tell them to start playing. And that's how jazz music was formed. And it was for the poorer society. And that just went on. Eventually, rock music came on, rock and roll came on, because it was again a revolt, not to the music, but it was more a revolt to society. There were a lot of wars happening, a lot of negativity, a lot of fighting, and people were tired of that. And if you've noticed, Beatles had initially early on in their career had a lot more happy, simpler, more danceable songs. And then later on in their career, when they grew up a bit and realized like they were also trying to revolt. When they released songs like Hey Jude, and when they released songs like A Day in the Life, which are like, these are more they're darker, they're more yeah, exactly. It's different, and that's what, like, a lot of bands were formed because of that, because there would be artists who just write lyrics and like poems and everything about or even stories about, like, what's going on in the world and how they just don't like it. And then they'd meet up with like, for example, The Doors, Jim Morrison, the vocalist and the songwriter, would write down poems, and then he met the other members, and he basically, they all play music, so they decided to do this, and all the aggressiveness, all the anger, it all comes out in the music. So that's where rock, when it came out, it was a lot more like, for example, the initial classic rock was very raw. They didn't have a lot, like, it was one guitar, one bass, one vocalist and one drums, and they were all like, really going at it, making some noise, just because they were so, they had so much energy in them, and they wanted all this fighting and wars to end and everything. So that's what so that's how, like, these genres come about. And so, like, different events in the world bring out different kinds of music. And so that's how, that's pretty, apart from pop music, which has been there throughout, which is more of the simpler music, which everyone can really, like, if you're gonna go to someone who's never heard a single song in their life, they should probably start off with a pop song, just because when you think of music, I mean, it's simple music. It's something everyone can like, even if, like, it's something everyone can at least appreciate to a certain extent.
So, touching on the Beatles example, we can maybe talk about, let's say, you talked about how they started off with, let's say, much simpler music, be it happy music, be it music that's just there to cheer people up in that sense. but maybe when they got more famous or they grew much older, they started putting out music that has, let's say, a social impetus. It has a social message associated with it. Do you think it becomes, let's say, after a point, an obligation for, let's say, the biggest of biggest bands, the biggest of musicians, to put out their views to the world, to say that because if they don't, then people will label them as, oh, he doesn't have a view on, let's say, Black Lives Matter, he doesn't have a view on this, he doesn't have a view on that, then can we really appreciate his music or her music?
Yeah. Well, I don't think that people can even. So the thing is, musicians are all really, and like these big musicians, they're all like you would look at them differently because they think they're quite moody. You know, they're quite they don't, and they get angry by simple things, and so something like Black Lives Matter, the musicians have already started, you know, like covering songs or writing songs about it and releasing it and everything before like anybody can even say that, you know, why is he not doing it or something, because it does. I mean, like they get triggered by it quite quickly, and they want to tackle it, and a lot of times it's like, even if the band doesn't do that, it's like, even if they don't release a single song towards it, they will still show something maybe in their concerts, you know, like they might talk about it, or they might, you know, just maybe show some more aggression towards something, or because that's just how musicians are on a general level. Like the bigger musicians, they would all they do feel affected by a lot of these things, and so they want to release their music so that people can know about it, people can you know, think the way they're thinking.
I guess not really in terms of musicians, but I'm pretty sure that may be the case with musicians as well, because I see it in different aspects of society, in different industries. So I recently saw that Amazon came out with something that promoted something like, so I'm not really sure which event it was, but it was sort of, let's say, a social message that we're putting out on their social media handles, and even trying to make profit off that on the websites, selling some particular merchandise or selling some particular products that were associated with that event. I'm really sorry, I can't remember the event that it was. But do you think that, let's say, it becomes fashionable after a point, that even if you do feel really strongly about these causes like Black Lives Matter, but eventually just to be politically correct, just to be morally correct in society, it becomes almost an obligation, because they are so famous, because they are almost like I don't know how to phrase this, but like they can, like Kanye West is standing for president in the United States, isn't it? I mean, in the sense that they have that much power when it comes to the top musicians, the top individuals. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm pointing towards.
They have a level of influence, right? And like if you look at brands like Coca-Cola or Nike or Google or something, you know, if they put out their views about how, you know, Black lives do matter, or other whatever issues that's going on, then a lot of people can get influenced by them. You know, they can make an ad which talks about this in a good way or something, and they can really, like, they can influence people a lot, and they do want to influence people, because if you're that big a brand or that big a musician or any celebrity, you would want to do what you can if you are also like for something, and you want everyone to be for that. If you are a big brand and you want people, you know, if you want black people to be treated the way white people are, then you will do what you can to get that out, because not only will you influence people, but people will know that, you know, you do care about this, your brand image goes up among people, and that does help the brand. So along with influencing people for what they're for, they're also getting their brand image up, which is smart, and that's what even musicians do. Yeah.
So this question is more related to, let's say, the language aspect of music, and aspects such as when we are, okay, so the question is basically, have you heard about, let's say, the Neurolink stuff that Elon Musk is talking about? So he's basically trying to create this brain-computer interface, and he's pretty ambitious about it. He said that in the next 5 years we'd reach a point that we wouldn't have to communicate as society, and let's say if the both of us are conversing, we wouldn't need the aspects of language to do so. We wouldn't need our vocal cords to do so. Uh, there'd be something that'd be instantaneously sent to you, and you would be able to interpret. You'd be able to understand what I'm trying to say, basically. So. And I heard this contrary opinion that someone else put out, and he or she said that what art basically boils down to is interpretation. And for example, you tell me something, and then I take my interpretation of that, and that's how good art, good music is stemmed. Because if we go down to, let's say, an aspect of Neurolink where whatever you say and I'll be able to get that, because what Elon Musk says is that language is a very inefficient way to communicate, because you get a lot of you have a lot of knowledge in your head, but you try to let's say bite size into a sort of something that's let's say easy for the other person to understand yet get your point across. So if we don't have the aspect of language and just send whatever we have to say, whatever we're thinking, to the other person, then it would be more efficient. But let's say this is an argument that, but we may lose out on art, because art in that sense is interpretation of what we see in society, or what we see in the world, or what other people talk about. Do you have any particular thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, so if that does end up happening, then yeah, people would. It boils down to if they even end up using that, if they even basically. So for example, right now a lot of electronic music is popular. Even in the, like, for hip hop music, the music part of it is almost always, programmed instruments and everything. And the only reason that was started was because people realized that they didn't need all sorts of musicians. They didn't need a drummer and a pianist and all this to come and record in a studio, so then they'd have to pay the musician, they'd pay the studio, and then they'd have to, take that and pay the music producer, because to put it all together and everything. And now all they simply have to do is just go to the music producer and just say, make a drum loop, make a piano little thing, make all these different things, and so he can make it right there. And programming all this is much simpler and cheaper than actually recording it in a studio and everything. So that comes with simplicity, and that's why people have moved to that now. So if this does end up becoming popular, then people would try to put it into music in a way, if it even could be put into music. But I feel like it music is for interpretation a lot. People listen to songs and think of them quite differently from one another, even if it's how you interpret the lyrics or how you view the music. It boils down to like how things are said, how points are made and everything. And so what I feel like this won't really affect music, but who knows.
So do you see music as, let's say, an escape from the world, and let's say the idea you're trying to put across, in the sense that often it's been labeled for artists, in the sense that painters aren't the best speakers and they let their art speak for them and whatever they're trying to express? Is it similar in music, in the sense that, as you mentioned, we were talking about, let's say, social messages that, let's say, musicians would like to put across, but they feel that they may not be in the best place to speak about it in a speech format, let's say, that presidential candidates would do. So they'd say that maybe if I can create a sort of music piece to do that may put my message across in the best manner, because that's what I'm good at. So do you think that it is an escape from the world to say that and express your views in a different point altogether, or do you think that that's all second place? First you have to get your music in a good place, and then maybe you can start worrying about the world?
Well, most people do most people are influenced by what's going on or what they've been through, even as they start up. Musicians, like I know people who are going to Berkeley, and they've already started writing, like they start writing songs because for Black Lives Matter in the US. They write songs because it's been influencing them, like for example, um, this Black Lives Matter has basically, so a lot of black people, a lot of black musicians have started writing music on this, and even white people have, and all sorts of people have, because like big or not, they start writing because that's what they're thinking about, and so that's what they're writing. And I feel like for musicians that are growing, it's less about trying to influence people with your music, or trying to put your point across, but more of um, that's what you want, that's what you can create right then, that's what's going on in your head, and so that's the kind of songs that you want are end up writing, and so that's what you end up putting out. So during, as I said, with like even earlier, how rock musicians were fed up with fighting and violence and war and everything, they started putting it out, and a lot of rock bands became big because they started putting these things out. But they could not have known they couldn't have known any better. They could not have known that, if I write about this, I will actually become big. It's just that that's all they're thinking about, and so that's what they end up writing.
So I kind of want to understand your process when it comes down to, let's say, creating music. So just what your process is like. Do you actually sit down with a pen and paper and put your thoughts across on what sort of a track you want to put forward, the sort of, let's say, beats or whatever technical terms there are, to the piece, and you want to put them forward in the track? Or is there some other way that you do it, or you listen to a lot more other sorts of music that maybe you'd like to emulate or take things from? Or is it something outside music as well? Do you read? Do you, let's say, consume media, or in the sense that, yeah, how do you create music?
So a lot of the music I listen to affects the music that I compose, and I usually keep my lyrics and the rest of the music separate, because I'm not as good of a songwriter as I am for like composing music and everything. So what I would usually do is I would have some sort of idea, some sort of inspiration from some song or something, which would make me go to the I usually compose on the keyboard or piano, and I would go on the piano, and I would play chords, or just which work from what I'm thinking about. So a lot of times, like, I listen to a song, and I get an idea which was not even in the song, but it just reminded me of some way, and somehow I get an idea of of maybe a vocal melody, or maybe just a feel of a song that I want. And then I would go and I would try to either figure out the vocal melody, or write, like, form chords for that song. And with that, once I get a little feel of what the mood of the song is, I would write the lyrics, start writing lyrics for it. And writing lyrics for me takes quite a long time. So I do it like, as in, like, the whole time composing everything else takes as much time as writing just the lyrics for me. And which is why I try to, like, I don't really enjoy writing lyrics as much as a lot of people. And so I do focus a lot more on the music part, and I do, when I write lyrics, I go and I ask people, what do you think about this? What are your opinions? You got any suggestions for me? And people do help me out sometimes on the lyrics that I write. For the music part, I don't really get as much help, because I want to do that myself, and I usually compose everything. So I start off with the chords on the keyboard or guitar, and then I would compose the drums, I would make the vocal melody, I would make the bass line, and I would also, basically everything in the song, I would compose it. If there's a guitar solo, I would, like, also create that. I would hum it or whatever, just to see what's going on. So if there's a chord like going ha ha something, whatever, I would just hum whatever I feel, whatever guitar solo I feel could work with this. Then I would get musicians to come and feature in my music, and I would basically tell them what I have, tell them my idea for, like, the guitar solo, my idea for whatever piano little piece, and they would. So, for example, chords and stuff like that, they played exactly as I made it, but then I do leave some space for them so that they can. So basically, for example, the song released last, which was Existence, had had a guitar solo in the middle, and the outro, which was like a guitar and drum solo. So that guitar and drum solo I basically composed fully, and that guitar solo in the middle, I just told the guitarist to do whatever you think is right, just match the mood of the song, and he ended up making something which was pretty good. And even for like, so what I don't really, so now how in vocal melodies I would go on the keyboard and I would figure out exactly what notes to sing. For the guitar solos and all, I would not do that. I would just hum out what I have so that they can experiment and do what they want, because if I'm featuring someone, I might as well let them have some sort of take on the solo, so that, because they are better at guitar than me. So, and actually even for vocal melodies, I do put it down just to give it to them as a foundation, that here, but then the vocalist would also put his or her own ideas into the song, and change it up. And that's why I actually like featuring musicians in my music, because I get all my ideas across, and like all their little talents and skills would be shown in the song. So that's how I write songs. Currently I'm writing I told you, an EP of 4 to 5 songs. And my whole process has been delayed because of coronavirus. Studios are all shut, I can't go record anything, but but it's still the same thing. For this one, I'm planning to just feature one musician who will sing and play guitar and maybe even bass, but it's all composed by me. So yeah.
Just to circle back on the aspect of when you said that you were writing lyrics. So is the process of writing lyrics similar to how, let's say, authors do? So in the sense that, the different authors have different approaches to how they write, but from what I've heard is that, let's say, many of them, let's say, take an aspect that they'd write, let's say, first thing in the morning. And because obviously writing books or writing journals is a lot, it's a lot more wordy than writing a song. So obviously they'd say that I would complete 500 words in a day, so that I don't want to exhaust myself, or I just want to keep it in terms of longevity. Is that similar for songwriting, or is it different? So in the sense that when you do get that idea, when you do get the thing, you have to complete that song then and there. Doesn't matter if it takes an hour, a couple of hours, the whole day, but you have to do it then, and you can't leave it for, let's say, a week or even a month, because you may lose out on that idea.
So that's exactly how it is. So how it works is, for people who, if you're writing lyrics, you start writing it, and as you write it, you know if you're going well with it or not, and if you're not going well, you stop. But if you feel like you're able to write pretty well right now, you just end up writing pretty much the whole song, at least the first draft of the lyrics, and with that you might even start changing up the music and everything, because a lot of times once you're in that zone, you have to do it right then, otherwise later your mood will change, your opinion will change, or the lyrics that come out or the music that comes out might not be the same. And so what musicians and I also do is that sometimes I just suddenly get an idea and I instantly go and I just figure out then, for the first song of my EP, which is more of an intro song, so it's a short song. I was just taking a shower and I was listening to music from the speaker, and I suddenly got an idea, and I was like, oh my god, I have to go. And so I just quickly finished my shower and I ran to the keyboard, and right then I composed the whole song. There were no lyrics, so I didn't have to go through that, but I composed the whole song, the guitar, the drums, the synths, everything, because I had the idea right then. And that's what a lot of musicians do. They just, sometimes they just wake up in the morning with an idea, and then they just go ahead and do that. They'd spend the whole day just working on that because that's what's in their head, and they don't want to stop because they don't want to forget or change their mood. Yeah, exactly.
I would have asked you this question before, but I guess I can add another aspect to this. Is that does music allow you to, let's say, contemplate different ideas which you wouldn't in professional life? So in the sense that abstract ideas that, let's say, wouldn't be possible in the real world. Does music allow you to do that, and do you actually do that with your music, or would you, let's say, like to stick with, let's say, more traditional things that you see around the world and work with that?
Well, a lot of music is abstract. A lot of music I listen to is abstract, and even music I compose is abstract. It's because so abstract music is a little more objectively, it's more difficult to compose and understand, just because it's not something that you experience. It's like if I'm writing a song about flying into space and going around flying, and then somehow just blowing up and ending up as like locked in a cage or something, just completely abstract ideas. And bands do this really well. There are bands like Pink Floyd or Tame Impala that create really psychedelic music, and they talk about abstract concepts really well. And I think abstract music is really good. I think that people should keep doing that, because that's even more of an escape for listeners than like regular music, because they're talking about things that you would never go through, and it's like watching a movie or reading a book. It's things are happening in there that would never happen to you, and it's just very entertaining and interesting to listen to.
So this brings me to this question, and I sort of link this to religion in that sense, in the sense that religion as a construct, whatever you may make of it, has given us as society a lot of things to consider which we may not have considered in the past. So there have been several scientific innovations and scientific ideas that have stemmed just from the concepts of religion. And I see that very much similar if we are creating abstract music. In the sense that is something that, let's say, musicians, artists are seeing in the world and sort of giving it their spin to things. And maybe later down the line, it's open to interpretation for scientists and how they may consider that in objective fashion, and, let's say, engineer some product out of it, or something that's actually tangible in the real world. Do you see that abstract music in that sense, not aside from, let's say, the aspect of pleasing the consumers who do listen to the music, because some of the best music I've listened to is abstract in that sense, but also has this objective thing that also trickles down?
So you mean in the sense that,
so for example, let's say that there are things such as, let's say, in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Quran, in religion, they talk about, let's say, a sort of afterlife. So in the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about that this isn't the only life you have. So you are basically a spirit, and then you have several bodies, and that really has asked us as individuals and scientists as well to question consciousness and what actually is consciousness, because we can't really get a grip on things. So in the sense that if you are, let's say, saying whatever, it could be as, let's say, abstract as having a man with a horse's head. So maybe down the line, how do scientists interpret that, in the sense that do they think that maybe, I don't know, that there'd be some sort of, let's say, cross between humans and animals, or I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now, but that's the sort of thing.
That's true. Like abstract music just does get people to think in a way, just as like a movie with an abstract context or a concept, or even like a book It's like, but I'd say music would probably get people to think, because because a song is so much shorter than a book or movie, and you're not really looking at anything, no visuals or anything. So it's music, it's how the lyrics work with the music. So that gets you thinking, and it's all abstract stuff. But what people can end up is that they get inspired by this kind of music, and they can, like, for example, if they listen to a song with, as you said, like a man with a horse's head, and if this is like someone who, like, if this is like a scientist, it's not, he's smart enough to know that that doesn't exist, and he can't really go ahead and create that right now. But he could also start thinking about how it actually could be possible, maybe in the future, how if they could take this and this and this, and how they could put it together, and how we don't have the technology for that right now, and what technology could be. And like this, it just inspires people, because it gets people thinking, it gets people thinking about what, like, abstract things, again thinking about abstract things, and seeing if there's any possibility of them being real.
So this brings me to this question that, let's say, because you said that you produce and even listen to a lot more abstract music than, let's say, contemporary music. So when you are producing music, when you are creating music, is there a thought like this, that, for example, do you think about how people who listen to your music would actually interpret your music, or do you not think about that at all, and just produce your music and then let the interpretation be to the individual, because you can't possibly interpret, someone's interpretation may be totally different to another person's.
So yeah, the whole point, I think, of making abstract music is that you don't want people to interpret it the same way. And so when you're writing, at least for me, when I write abstract music, I start off with a simple idea, right? I would write a story of sorts, or maybe just talk about the idea, and then I would just make it extremely vague and extremely abstract. I'd make it not like, if I'm writing a story about an experience in my life, I would then make it vague, so it's not about me, it doesn't have anybody that anybody can relate to, but somewhat, and then make it abstract. I'd make maybe one person a fish, and I'd make one person like a planet or something. Like, it's just completely different. And it basically, because, so what I thought of the original story, it's possible no one would ever think of that, right? But people would get different ideas, and that way abstract music can actually reach a bigger audience.
This sort of, let's say, points me back to one of the arguments I was making earlier, that art is so much about interpretation. So you put a piece out there, and then it doesn't even matter what you want it to be perceived at, but X number of people can interpret X number of things, which creates so many more pieces of art and so many more pieces of music. So it's the same with literature, in that sense that we study literature in school, and then the teachers tell us that maybe the writer was writing in a sort of fashion that he was, because of how he was brought up or something like that. But who knows? I mean, it could be a totally different thing.
Teachers interpreting that exactly, which is why, like people who go ahead to study literature, they start analyzing it themselves. The teachers aren't telling them what the writer thinks. The teacher will tell them what she or he thinks the writer thinks, and then they'd all have their own opinions and everything. And that's it's like that with any form of art, honestly.
That's quite interesting, because I mean so if we do move to, let's say, an artificial presence of ourselves, where we are living out of just our consciousness is present, and there is an artificial body that it does everything we do. So I think that may obviously this is probably a very big thing in the future, but we may not have art in the sense that we have art today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it will change, because with technology everything changes, and for the good or the bad. And this is in a time when we probably won't even be alive. And so the people of that generation don't know any better than the art that's there with them right there. and so that's just what. So it might be like, it might be worse than what we have right now, but then again, that might be what they end up liking.
So I know you sort of are interested in computer science as well, and you did that in high school, and you were contemplating doing computer science maybe in university as well. So and I was probably going to ask you this question. It doesn't really matter if you have to give me a really objective answer to this, but do you think that artificial intelligence can, let's say, create music as good as, let's say, how we as individuals, how we as humans create music?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Eventually, artificial intelligence can do that. At this point, like, artificial intelligence has already started, like creating simple beats and music and everything, and it's obviously not. It's not that good right now. But with time, just because how fast technology is advancing, like, artificial intelligence can make good music, and that will be at a point when if AI is making music, then people won't really make music as much, and it all goes down to, if artificial intelligence if they're making music using artificial intelligence, then the music's going to be very different from what we have right now. It's going to be all electronic, or who knows? We don't even know. It might be something that we've never even heard, and they will be able to make very interesting music, and I'm curious to see, like, like, in my lifetime, if they can ever end up making music that actually becomes a big hit, that's actually like a song that people listen to, because technology is advancing so fast that that if somebody's working towards making AI that makes music, then they'll get there, and it will be very different. I don't even know if you can still call that music, but yeah, I feel like they will be able to make something pretty cool. I don't know if I like it though, but it would be interesting to see what they make.
Why do you think that it wouldn't be, let's say, vocal, or it'll only be, let's say, instruments based or electronic? And that's it.
Well, by electronic, I meant that it won't be instrument based. Okay, vocal, right. It could be vocal because, I mean, so it depends. Like, so let's say artificial intelligence starts making music for vocalists. Then there'll be vocalists or rappers who would, get their lyrics and the whole music just given to them, made by a robot, and then they'd sing it because it's their voice, and then it'll become their song, and that basically removes the job for every other musician, right, apart from vocalists. And I feel like that would be that, in that sense, it's not nice, but that would be the first step towards artificial intelligence music, because people would still want to hear a human being singing rather than a robot. Just because it depends on, like, how much emotion a robot can show, and it'll take time. It will take a lot of time to basically get music that we can actually enjoy from artificial intelligence. But yeah, I mean, if it continues like it's continuing right now, then yeah, eventually there will be artificial intelligence songs, and I don't know how people would react to them, because it's going to be so different, because what the music right now is based on experiences people have, as I said, and these robots do not have that. So what will they write about? Will they write about experiences, just general experiences that people have gone through, or it's through machine learning that they start writing about stuff, but it's not something they went through, so it's not the same thing.
So I don't know, I'm just playing, let's say, devil's advocate here, but so I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but I've mentioned this on the podcast a few times. So there's this company called DeepMind in the UK, and they made this artificial intelligence computer machine which played this game called Go. And Go is, let's say, it's the most intense board game in the world. So it's much more complex than chess. So every chess move has about 25 potential combinations on the board. Every Go move has about 250 combinations on the board. So it's supremely complex, and only a few people play it. I mean, there a lot of people play it in South Asia and let's say Korea, China, but it's not that well known around the world. So they made this machine, and they didn't put any prerequisites on it, in the sense that they only taught it the game, the rules of the game, and they let it play for itself. So they didn't ever give it, let's say, any sort of there wasn't a human touch to it. So in the sense that there was this machine created by IBM back in the day, when the first chess playing machine which was created, a computer chess playing machine, but that was through human input. So in the sense that humans told that these are good strategies to implement on the chessboard, and that's how you should do. But this machine, talking about the Go example, they learned it by themselves, playing against themselves, and it would only get to know that if it won or it lost. And that in that way they beat the world champion of Go in South Korea 4-1 basically. So the point I'm trying to make here is that when you if you talk about, let's say, experiences that we go through, who is to say that our the way we look at experiences is very primitive? The way, let's say, artificial intelligence looks at experiences could be the way they play against each other, in the sense that maybe I don't know how to term it, because it hasn't been done as of yet, so I don't know how to link it with the aspect of a board game and music in that sense. But do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I get your point, and I think that, well, see, here's the thing: when it comes to a board game, and you're saying that, so basically the AI won, but so and you can compare that to music by saying that the song is finished, right? But it's different, because it's, you finishing the song is one thing, and the AI finishing the game is one thing, but it's still artificial intelligence that that is basically, it's machine learning. So it learns through experiences it has itself. So for the game, it would just keep trying different things and remember what it did earlier, and what worked, it would go on with that. What didn't work, it would not go on with that. Do the same thing in music, and it's just a very abstract thing to think about, because nothing, we can't think
Exactly.
if we're thinking of a world where all music and all art is made by AI. It's just difficult to imagine.
Something I just thought on the go, I guess, is that, for example, what we today consider as rock music or jazz music and all these different genres we have, not to, let's say, show what the humans have created, because I think that would, let's say, be a human input in that sense, but similar to how the rules of the games are established. So maybe tell them that what instruments are used, or maybe what sort of beats are used. Again we're looking at, let's say, a human input that because it's easier when it comes for a board game, because there is a set of rules that's there. Music is so abstract, anyone can look at music in the way they do. So yeah.
Exactly. And so, if people are programming AI to make music, they would make music in a certain way, and completely different from somebody living halfway around the world, right? And so this is why I feel it'll be interesting to hear what AI music would be, but it wouldn't. I feel like it wouldn't be that influential to people, just because it's gonna be it's not gonna be the same, because it's made. I feel like it'll be similar to each other, just because how will they know what to change if they've only learned one thing? I mean, if they've learned how to make these kind of beats, these kind of things, some people. And also another thing is that people appreciate all different kinds of music, and so for AI to make music, they're gonna have to make it all around the world, from all, similar to people who've come from all sorts of backgrounds and everything, and AI music can be I feel like AI music would not be the only kind of music. It could be like another, a genre or an extension to music where like there could be like AI made rock music or AI made jazz music, AI made hip hop music, but um, but I feel like people still have to make music just because they want to. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a good way to, let's say, segue into this question. So what actually what I associate music to is, and art to in a larger extent, is that when we look at music and art, if you ask an objective person, he wouldn't say that's almost, let's say, essential to living, in the sense that it doesn't provide us with food, shelter, or in those sorts of ways. But do you think music and art is so important is because it helps us move away from, let's say, a moral nihilism? Because if we don't have these things to focus on, and we don't have, let's say, music or art to find meaning, even if that meaning makes no sense, maybe when we die, or it doesn't matter, like in the sense that when we are living, but just the way we are living, just so that we don't kill each other, just so that we find, let's say, meaning, things such as love, things such as community, things such as family. These things are brought about in art, music, and things like that. So in that sense, do you think it's important to actually, music and art is important to find meaning and not move into a moral nihilism in that sense?
Well, here's the thing. For the majority of people, they're not actually listening to music or watching things, movies or TV shows for meaning, like to get some sort of meaning out of it. But it's more of just like to pass time. So in that sense, it doesn't matter. But it's like people are inspired by different things, just through different things that they go through. If people listen to music or any other form of art, they'd like look at a painting and they might just their mind might start thinking in a different way after that. It's like maybe listening to some president's speech, which really impacts the way you think, or maybe watching even a video on YouTube, which really just changes the way that you're approaching concepts. And so that would be in like a, as you said earlier, in an artificial intelligence world, that would not be like as possible, right? But since like the thing is that the majority of people do listen to music just to dance or to relax, to chill, and they're able to like, I mean, they'll be okay with things like that.
Yeah. So this last question, and if you allow me, it's a little philosophical in that sense, but just for the final phase, I guess, what do you consider the meaning of life?
Oh wow. What do I consider the meaning of life? Well, what I think, what I do believe is that we're all living for a very short time on the grand scheme of things, and everything we do is quite insignificant. And so when we live, we should really try to make the most of it for ourselves and for like the people we care about. But I feel like and I'm sure you got better answers for this than me, but I feel like for me it's like, I wanna, like, there are people who would work throughout their entire life to get some sort of meaning out of it. But I feel like you can't really say there's a meaning to life. I mean, we were born because of reproduction, and we will eventually die. So we're on this planet where we're doing things so that we can survive. We're working, we're eating, we're sleeping, all that. But I feel like you should just try to like enjoy, try to like have a good time while you're here. And I do, and the reason I am taking up music instead of computer science is because although, like, unless I become a big musician, there will be less money for me. But I mean, what's the point of getting much more money if I'm just I'm eventually gonna die? So I might as well just enjoy it, and I can survive on less money if I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Thanks, Manas. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Just before you go, if there's anything you'd like to plug, your social media handles, where people can find your band, come to some of your concerts and things. Yeah.
My I'm on. So my name as an artist is manasrk, which is manasr.k. And I'm on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, basically any streaming service you can think of. I'm on Instagram, which is with the name manasrk_, and my band is on Instagram with the name of Inverted Zebra. But currently we're not performing. If the situation gets better, and I think it will, because I am here till January because of coronavirus. So eventually when the situation gets better, we'll start performing and all. But my new EP should be coming out in the next few months sometime. So yeah, that'll be on YouTube and Spotify and every other place.
Times ahead. Thanks for coming on. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Manas RK, do consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, which goes by the name of Ishan Agarwal, dropping a review and rating on Apple Podcasts. It helps the podcast reach a larger audience base. Following me on my social media platforms, my Instagram handle @IshanAgarwal_, my Twitter handle @AgarwalIshan_, and my website/blog, ishanagarwal.net. I would also like to thank Nandini Agarwal for the amazing artwork for all the podcast episodes that are out on YouTube, Spotify, and the other media platforms. Do consider following her on Instagram @Nandini Studio. Thank you once again, and see you in the next one. Until then, bye.